And it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I am Mr. Warren Hayes, and we are going to be reviewing the May 29, 2024 edition of AEW Dynamite. Thank you for being here. Hello and welcome. A busy show, a newsworthy show, a show that, look, if you want the Cliff Notes, I like the show. I thought last night's Dynamite, because of course we record this on the Thursday, right? We always do this the day after. So it is currently, as I'm doing this, it is late morning on the Thursday, Eastern Standard Time. So I'm going to be talking about stuff that happened last night. Bear with me. Now here's the thing. I liked the show, and I really did. And there's a lot of things that happened here that that I feel are sort of making my point. I don't want to sound like I'm taking a victory lap or anything here, because I'm not. I legitimately, I'll let you know when I take a victory lap. This is not the case here. But I feel like there's a lot of things that happened on the show that have been proving me right about the feelings that I've had over the past few weeks. You know, if you listen to the Dynamite reviews on a regular basis, you know that I've been very ambivalent about how the show's been set up and how things are going and the vibes and the booking, and, you know, not slamming my fist down and saying, you know, all of this sucks. I'm just like, losing a bit of perspective, and I'm like, there's something off. There's something not going. There's something that's not connecting anymore. I'm coming around to maybe just outright accepting that, North American wrestling fans want a bunch of stuff that is not wrestling, and that's always fascinating to me. But maybe this is what they want, after 20 years of WWE doing whatever they want, 20 plus years doing whatever they want. No, just about 20 years. Don't get too ahead of yourself for it. 20 years of WWE doing their own thing. I was saying to myself, well, when we get to the point, I was saying to myself when AEW came on, well, now we'll get something for wrestling fans, and this is probably what a lot of fans want. And I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe this is what they want. Maybe this is what the audiences want. I don't know. I don't know anymore. All of these feelings have been permeating the reviews over the past couple of weeks, because I feel like the Dynamites were not necessarily spectacular. We're a far cry from the great Dynamites, and this was not a great Dynamite. This was a very good one. I guess for it to have been a great one, we would have needed just maybe another, one really great singles match, one where it blows the house away, and just I'm sort of going askew off the point that I'm trying to make, which is that I've had ambivalent feelings about how things have been going, and I've been trying to put my finger on it, and I'm like, this is strange, it's off, this is not the AEW I know. And last night I saw glimpses of the AEW I know, and guess what everyone is talking about today? The stuff that makes AEW special, that the things that people connect with in regards to AEW are the things that the very next, once the show was done, sure, but even today is the stuff that people are talking about. So again, I'm not taking a victory lap, but I feel like my feelings are validated. How about that? Let's. You want to start opening up about your feelings there, folks? Well, no, but I feel like my feelings are justified. That I was not off base, and on top of that, even before coming in, I was ready to go with this, and we're starting off the review with maybe stuff that isn't directly related to last night's Dynamite, but I was coming in here with the same vibe, with the same conclusion that I just presented here. But I was coming in with that because of a post that Brian Alvarez made on the Observer forums earlier this week. I think it was Monday, right? In regards to Tony Khan and the booking. And I read this and I was like, oh, so I am not off base. This might actually explain why things feel off and a little slapdash and how we're focusing on very strange things and the matches aren't there and the stories. I was coming in with the same intention. Last night's Dynamite really compounded it. I was like, okay, yeah. All of my arguments are coalescing into reports and visible things happening, like observable things happening where I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. This is starting to make sense to me. Now I can start to not feel like I'm alone on an island having freakazoids scream at me because, I didn't say, because I didn't say Double or Nothing was great. Thought it was good, but I didn't think it was great at all. But this here, what Brian Alvarez posted on Monday on the board, really, it brought something to light for me. Here, listen to this. This is what I'm going to read the post. Quote, Tony, we're talking about Tony Khan here, of course. Tony switched the script on yesterday's pay-per-view multiple times during the afternoon. Most people, not just the wrestlers, have no idea what they're doing until the day of the show, and sometimes not until an hour or so before the show. People are flown into towns and given nothing to do. Others are begged the day before to show up to please get to the town so they can do something last minute. He knows what he wants to do for the pay-per-views, although this often changes. But as far as week-to-week TV, everything is booked show to show. For most people, he's incredibly difficult to get a hold of. In some ways, it legitimately is more like 2019 WWE than it is 2019 AEW, where he was much easier to get a hold of. He had very complex long-term storytelling. Many people had a good idea of what they were doing and where things were going, and often most of the following week's entire Dynamite card was booked and announced before the previous week's Dynamite had even ended. Remember when Excalibur would run down 24 matches in 30 seconds for the following week? It's night and day, the changes, and people who work for the company. It's night and day and changes and I can't read all of a sudden. Bear with me. It's night and day that changes, and people who work for the company in all roles, from the wrestlers to the office, talk about it in all caps all the time. So I'm not nuts. I'm not crazy in feeling that things are a little scattered all over the place. There doesn't seem to be any real forethought being put into this. I talked about, like I said, I've been talking about it on the Dynamite reviews for the past few weeks, even before this stuff ever came out. I've been talking about how the vibes, well, this explains it. This explains it. I talked about it again on the, on the Double or Nothing review on the podcast this week. Same thing. It all makes sense now. It all sort of comes together. Tony Khan is running week to week, changing plans last minute. Sounds familiar. Does that sound familiar to you? What's the expression? You live long enough to become the villain? It's been 5 years. It's been 5 years. When I tell you with my whole heart, because all I can do is be as honest with you all and how I feel and how I perceive things. That's That's what I'm here. That's what I do here. That's all I can do. When I tell you earnestly that there's stuff that is off, that this is not the same Dynamite that we were introduced to, and when it got real fucking good, this is not the Dynamite. What we have right now is something else. Something akin to what we've seen elsewhere, and it is not the same level of quality. It just isn't. Now, if Tony is doing week to week, if he's changing plans on the pay-per-view last minute, if they're getting flashes of genius and, trying to get people to fly across the country to come in last minute for a show, is that right? Then I think it explains a lot. I think I talked about it, but it bears mentioning again, especially if you're longtime listeners to my Dynamite reviews. There was a stretch of time, a long stretch of time, where I would sit here, speak into this microphone right here, and I would scream into it that we were spoiled week after week with the quality of television matches we were getting, the quality of great television programming. I believe I even said that, Dynamite might be the greatest, televised professional wrestling show of all time. That's how good it was. That's how consistently good it was. We're not talking about a 3-week streak here. No, I remember losing my voice over that. Might be exaggerating. Didn't lose my voice, but getting very hype about it. So things are different backstage from the top, from the guy controlling everything. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? It means Tony has too much on his plate. Something has changed from when he began, and he can't handle everything. He's got other considerations with the Jaguars, and he's got Ring of Honor and the soccer football thing, right? What can be done? Goodness gracious, I fucking delegate shit. I don't understand how this is happening. Just like I didn't necessarily understand, how things would be so bad in WWE when Vince was around and in charge and tearing up scripts at the last minute or during the show or 10 minutes before the show. We're not there yet. I agree, but I don't understand. And it's the same thing here. And I have to apply the same logic because I still don't understand. WWE would boast about having a writer's room and having all these producers and so on and so forth. Why is it, all these writers and creative people, and why is it then that the shows were so awkward and bad week after week, and Vince would be tearing up scripts and starting over? Like, how could you get to that point? How was that even possible? It's the same thing here. You've got about 20 people sitting in on creative calls for this company. And Tony's there. How can Tony be overwhelmed when he has all of these resources at his fingertips, when he has people that he could objectively be delegating to? He could turn around to, Colt Cabana. And, just throwing it, Pat Buck or Jimmy Jacobs. And he could turn around to them and say, guys, you're in charge of Ring of Honor. You book the weekly show. Does he need to be involved in this? I don't think so. Not when your moneymaker, your breadwinner, your prime show is suffering in quality. The ratings aren't great. Attendance is shit. You should be focusing on restructuring and rebuilding that, as opposed to, you know, keeping everything spread and you being the bottleneck, the end of the funnel. I honestly don't understand. I honestly do not understand how this place has got to. And like Alvarez said, how long has it been since we heard Excalibur rattle off, a dozen shows for the next week before Dynamite was actually over? When's the last time that we'd meme about it? We'd laugh. We'd have a good chuckle about it. We'd be like, Jesus Christ, And good for Excalibur for doing it, right? Packing it all in. But it was the greatest indication that there was long-term booking, that there was things that were thought out. There's stuff that happened last night that I question other decisions that were made over the past 3 days. Where I'm like, I don't understand why we're doing this if we did that. There's stuff that is completely baffling to me. I told you all something was off. I told you. And we're getting more and more little peeks, little insights as to things being a little not exactly perfect backstage. And these things just happen to explain why these vibes are off. I'm not making this shit up. I'm not trying to be a doomer. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm observing. And I'm bringing this up because I find there's an interesting little cause and effect situation here from what Alvarez is reporting as to what I've been observing. I think it's Lego blocks. They just build right on top of each other. Makes a lot of sense to me. But I think Tony, at this point, clearly needs to delegate some real powers. I'm not saying take him off Dynamite. Fucking take him off Ring of Honor, though. I think that's fine. Even Paul Levesque had the foresight to hand over NXT to his buddy Shawn Michaels. He's like, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. Even he had that foresight. Booker of the Year, Paul Levesque. Like I said, there's stuff that happened. You can point to things, discrepancies in continuity. And they have a guy who's supposed to be taking care of continuity, right? They hired a guy to do that. It's all falling apart because the top guy, the guy who is responsible for the show, the guy who is at the top clearly is frazzled over. Look, maybe he's over. Maybe this whole thing with this whole media deal negotiation. Maybe that's taking up a lot of mind space, and it should. It should. And that's not even counting all the regular rigmarole that goes around being the CEO of a company that has a weekly, a multi-million company that has programming on live cable, nationwide cable every week. Like, we just focus on creative and the deal, but then there's fucking hell. He's running a company. There's always shit popping up that, especially with so many employees, talent, egos. What are we doing? Again, not a victory lap, but I kind of feel justified. I feel like I'm not off base. I think I was on to something. And I think I was on to something. But in regards to last night's show, which happened at the Kia Forum in Inglewood, May 29th, 2024. We'll get into that. 4,837 tickets distributed for AEW shows these days. That's not bad. That's pretty good. How does it compare to previous visits? Because this is like the fourth show. Third visit, fourth show that they run at the Kia Forum. The first time was on January 11, 2023, 9,636. Because everyone's pointing at Full Gear, right? Full Gear is the pay-per-view. And everyone's going, oh, what a failure. Yeah, but you never get the same numbers for pay-per-views, and you just don't. But when you look at the first time they came here with Dynamite, 9,636, and we basically have half of that a year removed, 18 months or so. That's telling. I don't know what to tell you. It's a good number for current AEW standards, but I can't hammer home enough how much 2023 was a creatively detrimental year to AEW. They came back on November 17. Well, they came back for Full Gear, right? On the November 18, 2023. They ran a collision on the 17th, which had 4,365 people. And then the actual Full Gear show the next day at 2,904. So take it for what it is. I mean, look, we've got enough to talk about today. There's a lot to unpack on this show. So we're not going to spend too much more time not talking about the attendance and all that. And I spoke my piece on the Tony Khan backstage stuff. Now we're going to talk about Dynamite, which, like I said at the top, is a show I liked. There's a lot to unpack here, and I really did like this show. And I think we're going to start by talking about the main event, which I thought was successful. Now, if I were to say what's the theme of the show here, of the review here today, if I were to ask myself that, Warren, what's the theme of the theme is, I was right. Like I said, there's things that happened on this show tonight that prove to me that when AEW sticks to doing what they do best, people get excited. We talk about it. It's good news. Or it can be perceived as bad news, but it's good news because people get passionate about it. We start talking about it. It becomes relevant again. And I think the main event is a good encapsulation of that. And of course, we're talking about the Casino Gauntlet match for the number one contendership for the AEW World title to be to challenge basically at Forbidden Door in a couple of weeks. This ruled. How high are we on Cage Match? I set everything up. I'm curious to see how because last night, there were just a few ratings in, and it was like over 9. It's still over 9. Well, barely, but still 168 votes. The Cage Match inmates gave this 9.02 out of 10. It might be a little high, but it was fun as hell. That was a blast. It ruled. This is the second time they do the Casino Gauntlet match. I thought the first time they did it at Daily Center a couple of weeks ago was a good little proof of concept because I liked it. I like the idea of you just don't know who's gonna be in it. So, we had Lance Archer pop up and we're like, oh shit, that's pretty cool, and Will and Jay White and all that. So, I enjoyed it and I thought it was a fun concept. I liked that kind of shit better than any, ladder match, any Money in the Bank knockoff, all this shit. If, in the consideration, of course, that me prefer that you would build a challenger for a champion as opposed to just popping off battle royals or gauntlets or ladder matches or Money in the Banks. I would much prefer challengers be built, because I think that's what makes it more successful. But listen, the match starts off, we get Jay White and Pac in it, and it's good. Like, everything in this match was good. And then Místico comes out next to a big reaction from the crowd. I had heard earlier in the day that Místico was probably going to show up. And quite frankly, I thought he was going to win. If you listen back to the Mr. Warren Hayes Show podcast this week, I was saying, okay, well, for the AEW title, we'll probably get Místico and versus Swerve. When they announced that they were doing the gauntlet, I was like, okay, that'll probably. We'll get to the New Japan stuff in a second, because New Japan's in shambles a bit right now, but we'll get to that. So I was thinking, oh well, it would make sense then to get a CMLL guy up there, and Místico's the top guy, and okay, so Místico comes in, then Will Ospreay into another gauntlet. Ospreay, this might be his match. He's won both so far. He's 2-0 in these gauntlet matches. And it's really fucking cool. As far as, I don't want to say dream match. It might be going a little too far. But as far as matches where you're like, will we ever see this? Místico and Will Ospreay is great. And Will Ospreay has a great exchange with Pac. And you're like, can't we do this? Well, wouldn't that be just tremendous? Pac and Will Ospreay would be phenomenal. And then Jay White is there and they tease, they call back to their New Japan days. And I'm like, man, all of this rules. All this is very fucking cool. I'm sitting there and I'm saying, this is great. I'm watching AEW and I'm excited. I'm feeling good. I'm watching these guys, all of these cool ass fucking wrestlers in the ring, guys I like, guys who a lot of people like, all doing cool shit together. Like, okay, this fucking rules. But you'll notice the connective tissue between all of this was Ospreay. Ospreay, see what I did? Ospreay and Pac, Ospreay and Jay White, Ospreay and Místico. Keep that in mind. Put that in your brain for now. Big surprise, Shota Umino shows up. And he gets a tremendous ovation. Look, I will never say this enough. If there is one guy, how many guys in the history of pro wrestling have maintained their careers, have built their careers, and have maintained their level of popularity so much based off the rub they got from one dude? Because the Jon Moxley rub made this kid. When he fought Jon Moxley at Resurgence a couple of weeks ago, the New Japan show that they did in California, when they fought there, when they announced the main event, I heard a lot of grumbling, about, they should have saved this for Japan. This is a show a main event that should be happening in Japan. And you can go back and listen to all the tape, and I've been consistent everywhere. It was a perfect main event for a North American crowd, because Everyone here knows who Shota is because of Mox. He's Mox's guy. He's Mox's, young lion, whatever. But he's Mox's guy. And people know this, and that I have argued that he's probably more over here than he is in Japan. And last night fucking proved it. He came out, crowd got a pop. They knew who this guy was. Didn't need all this, the fucking video packages and all this bullshit. They just trotted him out. Of course, he's been on AEW programming before, don't get me wrong. But that's the point. People know who he is. He comes out, he gets a huge reaction. He has this tremendous exchange with Will Ospreay. And Shota is into it. He's electric like he never is when he's wrestling in fucking Japan these days. You could feel it. He got back up on his feet. Crowd was up on his feet. He had his arms extended. He was like, let's fucking go. He knew this was fire. This was great. He could feel every guy in this match could feel it. Claudio comes in next. And what a tremendous addition. He's just beating people up. And he's trying to get to Jay White. Jay White's taking a powder because he knows. It's like, no, I can't fight this guy. And that's typical knife pervert switchblade behavior. And then it all ends up with some really fun spots during the picture-in-picture where Claudio just loses his mind and does, big swings to everyone. I think that's the biggest bump that Mystico took the entire match. God damn Mystico. Comes in, this is probably a very decent payday for him too. Comes in and he does jack shit. He was out of this match for the majority of it. He was out at ringside. You didn't see him. What the hell was Mystico doing, right? I think it's the biggest bump he took the entire match. And then at the end, he jumps into the ring to confront Will Ospreay. What a fucking worker. What a tremendous fucking worker. When he jumps in the ring as Swerve's music hits, as the champion's about to come out. You get Mystico jumping in the ring to stare down Ospreay like they do in Mexico, like they do I wasn't taken aback from it. Like that's how you build matches in just about every other, country. People jumping into the ring after a match to stare down the other guy. Anyway, Claudio goes nuts. Lio Rush came in as a surprise. I'm sitting there and I'm going, not only is the in-ring solid, electric, there's a great pace to this match, but we're getting really cool surprises on top of it. We're getting like people coming in that you never expected to see, and Lio Rush is coming in. Now, I've talked about, Lio Rush recently, especially when in regards to the Resurgence show where he was on there on the pre-show with Mustafa Ali. Lio Rush circling back to getting back into people's good graces again. Is this a little bit of the Rocky Romero magic working here? Where he gave him, he gave Leo a spot. It wasn't a spot on the main card, but he gave him a spot on Resurgence, sort of mend bridges with New Japan. He was on the cusp of getting a contract with New Japan, and then some illness happened and it all fell apart. And he was doing great work in Japan. Like, I could not have thought of a better fit for him than working the junior division in New Japan last year. He was tremendous. And it really sucks that everything fell apart. And then, he got Mopey online again. And then he comes back and he does the thing for New Japan. And then he shows up here. And again, like, he was with AEW for a very short while, but he was with AEW. And then he hit the bricks. Are we mending bridges? Are we giving Lio Rush another shot? And people will ask how many chances do you give this guy? Look, Lio Rush I feel he's one of these guys that he's his own worst enemy. If he stays out of his own fucking way, sky is the limit. I have said this before, and I will say it again. I think we are better off having Lio Rush wrestling in wrestling than not. He's tremendous, and he's still tremendous. And people knew who he was, came in, was explosive. Is he mending? I am all for another chance. I think people can change. I think things sometimes certain factors can get into your way and make things difficult for you. I do. Now, how many chances are we going to give Lio Rush? I don't know. I don't care. Of course, you're a little weary. You see Lio Rush come. Let's say he rejoins. You're like, well, do I get invested in this run? Do I get invested? Am I a Lio Rush fan again? I'm rooting for him. Don't get me wrong, but is it just a matter of time before the shoe drops? Maybe. Or is this the one? Anyway, that was a really fun surprise. Orange Cassidy comes out, who had been in an altercation early on in the evening, but he came back with his dark denim and a head bandage because he bled after his confrontation with Trent. Hechicero comes out as well, and just a tremendous final stretch. And the crowd was on their feet for most of this match. It was surprising. You got surprises, you got great work, excitement, an electric pace, people that the audience knows, recognizes, loves. I think, look, out of them all, I think Hechicero might have been the guy who got the least amount of pop, but he's still a guy. When he showed up on Collision, what was it, was it earlier this year or late last year? I don't quite remember. I think it was late last year, right? When he showed up on Collision a couple of times and fought Danielson, and people were like, who the fuck is this guy? He's tremendous. Anyway, good match that Will Ospreay won, which shocked me. I am shocked. I was shocked that Will Ospreay won. Why? Well, because, I'm glad you asked. I will tell you why. Why? Because I think conventional wisdom led everyone to believe that Will Ospreay was going to be the guy who was going to be in the main event of All In. I think people were seeing the future of Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay, but at Wembley Stadium. Will, at the pay-per-view this weekend, wins the international title, and he's being thrown into this match. Well, you get Will to wrestle. I think it's good. It's fine. So on. But I don't think anyone was expecting Will to win. Again, I was expecting Mystico. But no, what they decide to pull the trigger and have Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland for the AEW title at Forbidden Door. I don't want to say main event just yet. So no New Japan guy crossover for the AEW title. No New Japan dude challenging for the World Championship, challenging Swerve Strickland. People are mad. Look, I think, I don't want to say people are mad, but I think I can only base myself in the Mr. Warren Hayes Show Discord, which you should join, by the way. Link is in the description with the conversations that were happening there. In my own haunts, I've had very mixed reactions. I think that's the best way to put it. I think the people who are mad are really fucking big mad. Big mad. But I still feel like there's more people are going, oh, well, this is an interesting little wrinkle, an interesting little development. because it got me thinking, right? After the initial shock, I'm going, oh, this, and I had, this is weird. This is strange. I'm like, who in New Japan then would you bring in to challenge Swerve? Who's the big enough guy that you would bring in from New Japan in 2024 that would be a big main event, exciting top match for the company? Three of New Japan's former top stars or big stars, top guys, are working for AEW right now. Okada, Ospreay, Jay White. Who do you bring in then? Tanahashi again? It's like no. and not anymore, not in 2024. Tanahashi is completely done. We're done. He's cooked. He's stick a fork in him, he's done. Shingo Takagi would probably be the only other plausible guy. But then what happens if you put Shingo in this scenario here? Think about it for a second. Swerve Strickland versus Shingo Takagi, who is not perceived as a top guy in New Japan anymore, right? I'm talking, who do you send in? Who are your top guys? But Shingo isn't really even a top guy anymore. He's a firm upper mid card, sure value dude, right? He's a Tomohiro Ishii. He's a guy who comes in, has these tremendous matches, and goes home, right? They're not leaning the company onto him, he's not carrying the company on his shoulders. Like, they're not pushing him. They haven't been pushing him since the pandemic, really. So Shingo comes in challenging for a world title. I think the outcome is pretty predictable. You end up with a really cool match. Do not get me wrong. But the outcome, you're like, okay, well, of course Swerve is winning here. What are we talking about? So, there's no... And Naito? Well, I think the Naito plan has been clear. I think it was clear from the moment that Mox won it. And I think with what happened at the Gauntlet match confirms it. I think we're getting Mox at Naito at Forbidden Door and Naito wins the belt back. I think that's a thing. Yeah, so, who are and you can talk me up about Yota Tsuji, the young guys. Yota Tsuji, why not Shota? You can talk me up these guys. Zack Sabre Jr. Well, Zack Sabre Jr., again, is not perceived as a top guy. I think let's have this conversation once this year's G1 is done. Because I think this year's G1, the story is going to be the elevation of Zack Sabre Jr. I think that's inevitable. And I think Zack is going to the Tokyo Dome in a main event. That's my official prediction. But he's not a top guy. Again, this is not yet. And I don't think Gedo wants to burn him losing in a top spot because he wants to protect them until we get to the Tokyo Dome in January next year. So you can talk up all these people, but they're all predictable outcomes, right? Ospreay and Swerve. So just to wrap up the New Japan thing, I don't know who is the guy. And that's not necessarily on Tony Khan's fault. Not necessarily, if New Japan doesn't have any top guys ready to go, that's not Tony Khan's fault. We have to make do with what we have. And Gedo hasn't actually been on fire this year so far. It's been kind of tepid, been kind of dull at some points. Yeah, we're reeling from the loss of Okada, and sure, but at some point, what are you doing for the future? What's your next big step? Bloody hands, Gato. And I mean this. And you see it right here. Who's the New Japan top guy that you bring in for this one? I don't know. So that leads us here. Look, what's the outcome here? Because the thing that we get here with Strickland and Ospreay is we get a situation where we legitimately start asking ourselves, what is the outcome? Because I think you've got a true to form 50-50 argument going here. You could legitimately go anyway, and this makes this championship match, again, I didn't want to say main event, this championship match makes it extra more interesting than just, Swerve versus Yota Tsuji or Sanada. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, fuck, that's not even interesting. That will not move tickets. Swerve Strickland versus Will Ospreay, those are two top guys. That's a match people will buy tickets to go see. That's a match that might sway you into buying a pay-per-view because the result isn't clear. I think if not even 24 hours removed as I'm recording this, if you think about it, and there might be twists and turns and things that might happen in between, but Ospreay, if you think about it, when it comes to an outcome, he has to main event All In, right? He has to main event All In. He can't be lower mid card or upper mid card. He's got to be at the top, right? He did it last year because he wasn't a guy. He wasn't a signed AEW guy. Now he's a signed AEW guy, and you have to put him up top, right? Because they have to sell tickets this year. Like, the tickets are doing fantastic. Ticket sales are doing great. Don't get me wrong, but they need a little extra boost. So you got to put him in the main event. So to me, there's only two scenarios that are clear here. He's either winning at Forbidden Door and defending at All In, or he's losing to Swerve at Forbidden Door. He's winning the Owen to get the chance to face Swerve again at All In. And I don't know what scenario is best. And I will most likely talk about this more on the Mr. Warren Hayes show next Tuesday, because, I've almost taken up the entire time of the review, and we've talked about one match. So we got to get moving here. But if you're asking me, the two scenarios are completely plausible. Either he wins at Forbidden Door, or he loses at Forbidden Door, and then they go around and do Swerve and Ospreay 2 at Wembley. And that's exactly what they did with Ospreay and Kenny Omega, right? No, it's not exactly. No, because Ospreay fought Chris Jericho. I'm sorry. I'm confused. But they did that they did one match in New Japan, and then they did the other matches at Forbidden Door a few months later. My point being is that we have precedent for, in AEW specifically, we have precedent for the second match, for the rematch to happen a month or a few quick months after the original. We've seen it. Sometimes it's even a couple of weeks later. So, the thing here, and again, I'm going to talk about it more on, but I want to move on, so I'm just going to leave this thought here. The thing here is that, a lot of people say, Will Ospreay has to win, Will Ospreay has to win. I would not be surprised in the slightest if Will Ospreay is lobbying backstage to lose to Swerve at Forbidden Door. I would not be surprised in the least. And him losing to Swerve would not be a problem. I know a lot of folks are like, no, he has to be undefeated. No, who the fuck cares? His story doesn't have to be about an undefeated streak. His story could be, next time I fight Swerve, I'm going to beat him. It could be, he just could come up short. Anything at all. I know some people might be worried that Don Callis might involve. Well, we got to wrap that nonsense up. And I talked about it on the podcast this week. But the idea that my point that I'm making here is that Will Ospreay, I would not be surprised in the least if he's, talking with Tony, if he can get a hold of him, talking to Tony, telling him, I need to lose to Swerve. Because that's the kind of guy that Will Ospreay is. He puts over other people. He's done it multiple times in the past couple of years, putting over guys, knowing that this is the best move for now, that this is the best thing we can do in the short term, and especially with his pals. And Swerve Strickland happens to be a pal. It is absolutely in the character, the persona, the personality, not the character, but it is absolutely within the personality of Will Ospreay to do exactly that, to take the loss at Forbidden Door and give his pal, a guy who is struggling to come across as a credible world champion, a big win under his belt before losing the belt about a month and a half later. I buy it. I'm going to leave you with that. But it's the most interesting outcome. You got to move tickets. I think it's a match that speaks to AEW fans. I can get the argument of belt up Will as soon as possible, because he's probably the hottest guy in the company and probably the guy who can maintain the heat for the longest. I think it's legitimately probably the best possible outcome. The most interesting match that they can do, considering that both AEW and New Japan are kind of in the pits right now when it comes to proper challengers and high level crossover potential. I don't think it's as fluid as some people would expect, right? I think you have this, go for it, belt up Will. But that all of this situation ponders the question as to why did Will Ospreay win the international title if this is what we're doing with him? And I think that is an absolutely legitimate question to ask. But then we see with, Tony Khan changing plans last minute, the same day, up to an hour before the show, realize you see, and that he's booking week to week, you see that there is no plan. There is no long-term booking in AEW anymore. It's not there. Because if there had been a proper plan laid out, you would have seen Will would not have won the international title. Now the international title right now just adds a wrinkle that we really don't need, that will permeate conversations, and it is just unnecessary. What is Will going to drop the international title in the meantime? Is he going to put someone over? Again, he might do it, but it'll just show that there's no plan. That's what I'm saying. That's why that's all. I don't see what the value, now that we're doing this, that we're elevating Will Ospreay to the main event. Why did he win a mid-card title just before doing it? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. It's not good booking. There's no way to spin it. It's not good booking. let's get back to the show itself. 55 minutes. Warren. Show opens with Mercedes Moné coming into the ring for her championship celebration. I don't know what to tell you. With the balloons and everything, the championship celebration. And we're all going, oh, who's going to interrupt? Like, you know. She gets on the mic. She cuts a Jennifer Pepperman special. One of these generic, plastic, uninspired promos. Run-of-the-mill, humdrum. Basic. Very... I know y'all don't like to hear it. Very WWE segment in content and in package. Sky Blue appears on the Tonytron and reveals that she was the one who attacked Mercedes Moné months ago. No, it was not. Alex Marvez, who I thought was he was the number one suspect on my list. No, it was Sky Blue. Remember that? It was a big deal for like 2 weeks, and we hadn't thought about it again. Now we're pulling it out, and we're throwing it aside. We're just dumping that to the road. Look, credit where credit is due. There's closure on this, but Jesus Christ, this is it? This is the thing? This is what we're blowing the sneaky, lights out attack on? Like a one-off match on a Dynamite? Because that's what happens. Sky Blue attacks Mercedes and then they make the match for later on in the evening. And we're blowing it off. On this one-off match on a Dynamite, the first Dynamite televised match for Mercedes Moné since joining AEW, and we didn't even advertise it. You see what I mean? From week to week planning. There's no more plans. Why on God's green flat earth did AEW decide to not advertise that this week on Dynamite, Mercedes Moné was going to have her first televised match since joining the company? That is weird. And you can, but it's the surprise, Warren. I understand the surprise, but when your ratings aren't great, when you're struggling to get people in the building, you can't afford the luxury of having surprise appearances. The same thing goes for Mystico later on. You're like, why wasn't he advertised? It's the surprise. You don't have that luxury. Pop your quarter hours. Get 1,000 more people in the building. But you can do that only if you plan ahead. If you're doing show-to-show booking, then of course it falls apart. Sky Blue runs in, drops Mercedes Moné, as we said, sets up the match. Leads us to Swerve Strickland defeating Killswitch in a non-title match. Non-title and not eliminator. Why? Look, I'm not going to rehash what I talked about on the podcast this week regarding the eliminators and the non-titles, but I'm completely off the boat on this. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. There's no consistency. No one ever no one wins these eliminators because you know what? Most of the time, here's the thing, is that these eliminators are these, it's job guys. It's lower mid-carders who are put into these positions. You're like, this is not going to happen, so who cares? Just call it a non-title. But then what's the difference between a non-title and an eliminator? I know what the difference is. But I think that everywhere else in the world, if you're having a non-title match, you're having a tag team match, anything, and you pin the champion, then you get yourself a shot. The match itself was good enough. I thought it was fun, good final stretch here. But, you know, I know I've been saying this a lot. I've saw that, you know, I've been referencing a lot to things that I've recently talked about on other instances of the Mr. Warren Hayes show. But this connects, this match connects exactly to my thoughts in regards to Swerve and the Christian Cage match at Double or Nothing. Why is Swerve struggling with Kill Switch? Why is Swerve struggling with a lower mid-card guy, an underling of a bigger guy, a minion? Ne's a minion. Why is Swerve having a competitive, where he's getting his ass whooped, 11, nearly 12-minute match? It's like I said on my review with Christian Cage. He needs dominant wins. He is struggling for credibility right now, and you're not helping him by having him go 12 minutes with Kill Switch. Now, I'm not saying take him out in 3 minutes. I'm not saying squash, but I'm not saying 12 minutes. And I'm not saying long control segment by Kill Switch. And I understand the commercials and all this bullshit. Well, yes, okay, I understand. But then work around that. Find something else to do. There was no reason for him, for Swerve Strickland, your world champion, to be drawn into a fight here, into a big fight, because this was a big fight. After the match, he cuts off some of Kill Switch's hair, and a little tit for tat here. I don't know. I'm telling you, the follow up to Switch's, to Swerve's championship run has not been spectacular, and absolutely not like how I would have done it. And I understand, you know, everyone wants to look good and, you know, have these good competitive matches, but there's times where you have to, you know, trade the potential 5-star great match for a little, establishing your stars. Establishing your world champion on top of that. After this, Giovanni announced the Mercedes Moné match versus Sky Blue for later on in the evening. Then we cut to Mox, who cuts a promo against Rocky Romero, which is happening later on in the evening. But an eliminator match against Rocky Romero, who is 1-11 in AEW. Somehow he's qualified for an eliminator match. I don't understand. This is what I mean. It's like no one thought Rocky was going to win. No one was like excited about this. Hey, finally Rocky might get a shot. No. We know what this match was for. And a lot of, we're talking about it. Let's just get it out of the way. You know, it was a good little TV match. We're out of order here, but look. What do you want? We're over an hour here. You know, the IWGP World Heavyweight title eliminator match, Jon Moxley retained. And it was a good little TV match. Mox was still selling the shoulder here. So Rocky Romero works it. It all makes sense. And Mox finally overcomes him. Again, in the parallel here to Swerve versus Killswitch, maybe a little too much of a struggle for Jon Moxley, who was the champion, a legitimate top guy in the company, tough guy attitude, brawler, no nonsense kind of thing, you know. But maybe it's a little too much of a struggle against the guy who is 1-11 in the company. Of course, they used the shoulder for this explanation, so you get what they were trying to do here, maybe a little more than with Swerve, who's healthy, and, you know, Mox wins with the Death Rider, but Again, no one went into this match saying, "Oh my God, Rocky might actually have a shot here." This is what I'm saying. These eliminator matches are always against jabrones. They're always against lower card guys who don't stand a chance. And a lot of people that I know got mad that, we're doing eliminator matches for the IWGP World Heavyweight title, which is something that you would never even remotely consider doing in Japan. And people are getting upset. Well, I would assume that New Japan is signing off on this stuff. Like, I know there's a lot of rhetoric that, Gato doesn't care anymore and all this shit. But I cannot fathom that Gato is so disconnected from what he's so apathetic now that he's just like, do whatever the fuck you want with my title. I don't believe it. This goes both ways. If AEW is doing this, I'm sure that New Japan is signing off on it as well. So I think it goes both ways here. Let's move back then. We get the It's TV time with Chris Jericho. I have very, I'm not going to run down the segment. You saw it. There's a cardboard tree in the ring that just looks awful. There's a flat screen with the title. It looks exactly like it's a setup, and there's I want to say an altar, but that's not it. A podium to speak on in the ring. Look, it's very much the Jericho highlight reel from WWE. Look, here you go, guys and gals and non-binary pals. You've got your WWE wrestler talk show segment. Enjoy. There you go. But no, like, I'm the crazy one. I'm the guy. I'm the crazy guy who sees these things and points them out, and people go, but it's okay, Warren. This is what I mean. It's like, I guess this is what North American pro wrestling fans want. They want derivative shit. That's all they want. They want things that they've seen before. They want the comfort. They don't want anything truly different. They need the little, blankie of Chris Jericho having a talk show segment, which I already hate in WWE. I hated for years because it's stupid. Miz TV, is that what y'all wanted? We're this close we're this close to Tony Khan reaching out to upcoming free agent Mike the Miz Miznanen to bring him in and do Miz TV, do the point, spin around. Or it's the opposite. Spin around, point, hit the ring. Welcome to the greatest show of all time. Welcome to Miz TV. We're this fucking close. Hope y'all are excited about it. But I'm the weirdo. Of course. Anyway, Brian Keith is also involved in this, and he's clearly aligned with Jericho. They call him the bad apple. Big Bill does, maybe he's a bad apple, and then they go, 10 fucking bucks on the table right now that moving forward, Brian Keith will be known as the bad apple Brian Keith. $10 is on the table right now. That is my bet. Hook comes in. Samoa Joe materializes out of nowhere like he has teleportation abilities. I don't know where he came from. Did anyone? I don't know. And he talks to Hook, and then later on we go backstage. Let's just get it out of the way. Later on in the show, Renee Paquette is with Samoa Joe, right, and Hook, and basically they're aligning to take out Chris Jericho. Alrighty then. I as you can tell, I have no use for TV time with Chris Jericho. I have no use for this stuff. Like, I understand what they're doing. I understand. Don't get me wrong here, because don't anyone try to come and explain, but Warren, they're doing this because Chris Jericho is leaning into all the tropes. I understand. Just because I understand it doesn't mean I like it. See? So I know what they're doing, and I know that it's in, Chris Jericho's demeanor, this disingenuous teacher, motivational speaker combo type of character that he has, which I do enjoy, but this is too much. Like, this is, if we were still a couple of years back where AEW is dominated by great wrestling, great promos, and the sports entertainment stuff is relegated to a group of heels doing sports entertainment stuff, then I'd be like, all right, I get it, sure. There we go. Trying to, I don't know. Keep moving, Warren. Get footage of Mox beating Takeshita backstage, despite the fact that commentary told us that we were going to hear about Stephanie Vaquer, who might be coming in. It's Forbidden Door season, so she might be coming in. And then we get Mox and Takeshita. Like, I was like, this company is in complete shambles tonight. What are we doing? Like, this is complete nonsense. And they toss, but then we do get the video package for Stephanie Vaquer. Then we get the Moxley Rocky Romero match. We've talked about it. Then we get Don Callis coming to the ring to offer a contract to Orange Cassidy, who comes to the ring. Don puts him over and hands him the contract. Cassidy slowly tears the contract apart, which is pretty funny because Callis doesn't do anything to stop him. I was amused by that. I thought that was a nice little thing. Then Callis freaks out. Stokely Hathaway and Chris Statlander come out, and I'm like, what are we doing exactly? What's this? Stokely says that he doesn't like Orange Cassidy and compares him to Willow Nightingale because he's a heel. But basically, it's established that Chris Statlander she's full heel, and also abandoning Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy doesn't have friends anymore. He has no more best friend. Well, maybe Rocky Romero. And she says to Dawn that she accepts the invitation on behalf of her friend. And then another guy who materializes out of nowhere, Trent Barrett, is in the ring and he attacks Orange Cassidy. So I think what we're understanding here is that Chris Statlander and Trent are still friends despite being heels and not being like maybe there'll be a group, maybe not. Probably not, because Trent is joining the Don Callis family. He beats up Orange Cassidy, who bleeds. That's why later on Cassidy comes back and he's got a bandage on and he's in dark denim because he's been wronged. You sold out chants into the audience. I like the angle. I thought this was good. This was an effective, a good angle. I don't know what to do with Trent anymore. Like, I feel like getting beat by the other guy twice should be a deterrent to go back on him. I think since we've got blood now, I would assume that the next step is to involve violence, actual like blood and shit. Daniel Garcia's with Matt Menard, and he cuts a very low-key promo on coming after the International Championship. And I'm looking back now and everything that happened, I'm like, what are you going to belt up? Is this the plan, that you're going to have Will Ospreay drop the international title before getting to Swerve? See how all of these plans could have been properly. Anyway, I don't want to harp on that too much. Mercedes Moné defeated Sky Blue to retain the TBS championship. Fine TV match. I enjoyed this. And look at what happens when you have Mercedes Moné in the ring wrestling. Look at what happens. People cheer for her. They get excited. They're up on their feet. Instead of cutting promos week after fucking week. I'm glad they came out the gate of Double or Nothing. and she shows up on Dynamite and she wrestles, right? Because that was a concern I had. What are they going to do next? Are they, is she going to be is she on a limited appearance deal, or are they, is she going to come and wrestle and get herself over properly? Well, look, it seems like we're on our way. I mean, it was nothing spectacular, but a solid match. I enjoyed it. Moneymaker for the win. Stephanie Vaquer shows up at the end to a big reaction from me. We had the video package. You can't bitch, you can't complain. But I was excited. So we're clearly going to get Vaquer versus Moné at Forbidden Door at this point. I think it's cool that we're revisiting this match, because this was they fought in the inaugural Strong Women's Championship tournament, and of course Mercedes won. But for a lot of people, this was their first exposure to Stephanie Vaquer, who had been pretty much, relegated to CMLL doing the trios matches, because that's what a lot of the women do. But now she got to stretch her legs in a singles match against Mercedes, who was the center of attention in this tournament, and was destined to win the Strong Open Win title, of course, the Strong Women's title. So it'll be interesting to revisit this, and it's something that we talked about here. I might even answer my own question. Talking about Shota Umino living off the rub, getting to where he is off the rub of Jon Moxley. The Mercedes Moné rub for Stephanie Vaquer was tremendous. Like, she is much more of a name amongst wrestling fans now because of that match. She's been wrestling across, North America because of that match. People know her because of that match. She's going to do Fantastica Mania in the UK for Rev Pro because people know who she is because of that match. It all started from there. She looked great. Everyone was like, okay, bring us more of this woman. Okay, well, that's what we got. That's what's been happening. So it'll be interesting to revisit this. I don't think there's any indication that Mercedes Moné is going to lose this match, but I think we'll be in for something fun. It'll be good. Mercedes is on top of things. She's good. She's a good professional wrestler. Renee Paquette is talking with Stokely Hathaway and Chris Statlander. Stoke gives his motivations for turning on Willow, saying that she wanted the TBS, and basically saying that she was not listening when Statlander said she wanted the TBS championship back. There were a lot of signs leading up to this. I think this turn was really well done. And Statlander, says, I did something for myself and I get booed, kind of thing. So they're really leaning into it. So there you go. Good little segment here. Then we get a recap of MJF's return promo sans the profanity at Double or Nothing this past Sunday. If you want to hear my full thoughts on it, the review is there on the Mr. Warren Hayes show that should be on your feeds right now. The Young Bucks enter the ring to talk about the future of the AEW TNT Championship after Adam Copeland broke his tibia in his match on Sunday. Kazuchika Okada tells the audience to, hey, shut up, bitches. And promo of the year. And of course, the audience pops for it because it's Okada and it's tremendous. It's great. So they do things with Lamborghinis in it, but let's get to brass tacks. They're about to congratulate Jack Perry and and make him the new TNT champion. Jack Perry does the pose and everything. They're really happy. And I'm sort of praying that this is not the path that they're going to take. They didn't take this path, but the path they took is not a path I'm enchanted about, because Christopher Daniels pops in, shirt and tie, scrap daddy Christopher Daniels, because he's informing us all that Tony Khan has named him an interim executive vice president. He's not going away. He has been rehired, and that basically this has to be wrestled for, and there will be a tournament, and there'll be a situation where there's a qualifying match that will lead to a ladder match at Forbidden Door, and whatever. So we have, not only do we have the heel authority figures, folks, but we also have the GM figure. We have the good, reasonable GM to counterbalance that. Look, again, I'm going long. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there you go. I hope you all enjoy this. I hope you all enjoy this great non-creatively bankrupt ideas, right? Let's get more GMs. Scrap Daddy Christopher Daniels coming out here to take care of business against the evil authority figures. Let's have more contract signings on top of that. More championship celebrations that people interrupt. Let's keep going. Let's go. Right? That's what works. That's what's bringing in the big bucks for the other guys. It'll probably work for us, right, fellas? It'll probably work for us as well if we do the same thing as the other company, right? It's not as if there's historical precedent that proves that if you try to do what the big guys do, that you try to imitate them, there's no historical precedent that shows that it doesn't work. Yeah, of course not. We're innovators. We're trying new things. Woo! And then we get Nana and Strickland backstage cutting a promo for the match. You know what I liked about this promo? And it's a little detail, but these are the kind of things that give me hope, despite the fact seeing Scrap Daddy Christopher Daniels and championship celebrations and Ms. TV on AEW. Strickland is in the back, and he's talking about, the gauntlet match, and he's like, I'm ready for the challenger. And he sort of looks over his shoulder and he goes, I see who's here. There's a little, there's former champions, and there's some surprise, there's some surprising people here too, like he sees who's going to be in the tournament. He's not telling us, but he's not pretending backstage going, I wonder who's going to be in there. He's not insulting our intelligence on that level. He's like, yeah, it's an interesting bunch. I'm excited to see who I'm going to face, I'm like, cool, good. Don't take me for a complete fucking idiot. You can take me for an idiot, but not a complete one. Then we had the main event, the gauntlet, which we already extensively talked about. And we're going to wrap it up here for today, folks. But you know what? Here's the thing. Here's something that I have not said in a long time. Watch this Dynamite. Go ahead and watch it. I kind of recommend the whole thing. Not everything hits, not everything lands, but I think this was an eventful show with some fun little TV matches. It's a good use of your time. It's legitimately a good use of your time. And the main event rocks. The main event absolutely rocks. So, go watch a good episode of Dynamite. There's my suggestion. You've heard what you could skip if you really want to skip it, or you should see it for yourself, whatever. But I enjoyed this overall. And I hope you enjoyed this review as well. Hope you will be back next time when I do this thing. I'll probably be back, on Tuesday for the Mr. Warren Hayes Show live recording. I recorded live for the first time in months since the surgery, so that felt good, and I think I'm going to do it again this Tuesday, so hope you will join me there as well. Otherwise, join me on the Mr. Warren Hayes Discord. Leave a like on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes, a 5-star review on Spotify, 5-star rating on Spotify, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.